Anthony Albanese joined me in the Sydney studio. Anthony Albanese, you're a bloke who's grown up in inner city Sydney. You represent one of the furthest left electorates in the country. Why are you the potential Labor leader to broadly appeal to all Australians?
I think my story is someone who grew up with a single mum in public housing in Camperdown. I'm someone who has got out and about around the country as Regional Development Minister, as Minister for Infrastructure, as a Shadow Minister for a range of portfolios as well across the economic, social and environmental portfolios. And I'm someone, I think, that can walk into a pub in Hewenden or walk into a boardroom in George Street, Sydney, and have a discussion with people which is based upon respect and based upon dealing pretty frankly with people. I think what you see is what you get with me, and I think I'm in the best position to take Labor forward into government. We're now 3 days closer to the next Labor government as far as I'm concerned, and I'm very determined rather than despairing when it comes to Labor's prospects. How
would your leadership differ to Bill Shorten's?
I think I'm someone who comes from a different background. I think quite clearly I have had a range of jobs. I'm an economist by training. I've been in Parliament for more than 20 years. I'm very much a consensus person, and people will judge me by who I am rather than by comparison to Bill Shorten or anyone else.
If you do become Labor leader, will you go from scratch on your economic policy, and what will be your guiding principle?
Well, I think what we need to do is to re-examine our policies, but not re-examine our values. So it's our values that drive our policy across the board. So in economic policy, the value is that we want economic growth and job creation, that we want people to have opportunity in life, that we care about the distribution of wealth, but we also care about the creation of wealth.
Was, in that context, your franking policy the wrong move?
Well, I
think
the issue with the franking credits policy was that it impacted on some people who had made arrangements on the basis of the existing laws that were there, and they felt as though what we were doing was changing the rules midstream.
Your colleague Joel Fitzgibbon said today that Labor's tracked too far to the left, away from the centre, and that it needs to be less ambitious in its pace of change. Do you agree?
Well, what we need to do is to explain the fact that change is occurring and ensure that we put forward a strong argument that a Labor government will shape that change in the interests of working people.
And have you moved too far to the left, away from your working class base?
Well, I think the working class will certainly benefit from many of the policies that we put forward at the election. But clearly, we've had a message sent to us on Saturday. We need to respect that message. We have not sold the message well enough, I don't think, that we are interested in jobs and economic growth as the priority, as well as the distribution of wealth in our society.
But when you say you haven't sold the message well enough, that implies that you think what your issue is communication, not the actual policy.
Well, there's
themselves.
two issues. Some of the policies, I think there are issues that need re-examining, and it's up to the caucus. One of the things that I'm not going to do if I'm elected as leader of the Labor Party is to make policy on the run. I'll talk with the caucus, we'll consult, and on these issues, I think it's very important that in coming months we have a listening exercise, that I and other shadow ministers go out there, have meetings in towns and cities around Australia and listen to the feedback from our party members, our supporters and from those people who were disappointed with us as well.
That's what you should all be doing all the time, isn't it?
And we do campaign all the time, but particularly after an election, this is a chance to recalibrate. And we can't do things exactly the same way or we'll get exactly the same result.
On the disconnect issue that I mentioned before, is there a fundamental problem for Labor in how it views the issues facing Australian society? Because you're coming through the prism that most Labor MPs have affiliations with the union movement, whereas only 14% of Australian workers are union affiliated.
No, look, I think our connections with the trade union movement give us that direct contact with working people. trade unions are in touch with people at the workplace all the time, and I think that is a positive compared with the Liberal Party that doesn't have any structural connection with workplaces and what's going on at all.
86% of Australian workers aren't in those unions.
Many of those workers benefit from particular gains that are happening right now that are being fought for by unions, but every single one of them, without exception, benefits from the gains that have been made by the great trade union movement over a long period of time.
Only about 1 in 4 Queenslanders have voted for Labor. What's gone wrong for you up there?
Well, that's one of the big things that we're going to have to examine, and one of the first things I'll do is, if I'm successful, is to go to Queensland, not just to South East Queensland, but throughout Queensland, and to talk with people. I've done that in the past during the election campaign. I was throughout regional Queensland. We need to really examine how it is that we only got 25%. Of course, our primary vote was only 1 in 3 Australians throughout the country. So it's not just a Queensland issue. Our primary vote of 1 in 3 is simply not good enough. So Queensland has to be a priority.
Thank you for coming in to speak to us.
Thanks for having me on, Lee.